Hello everyone and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady and today I would like to talk about Games Workshop's decision to lower the point values for armies at their tournaments to try and stop slow play. Their reasoning for this is that games will hopefully go the distance instead of ending on an early turn because of time. Because for most of you who don't know, most games at tournaments only make it to battle round 3 or 4 because the players can't finish within the time constraints. So Games Workshop decided to make some changes to try and help players finish their games quicker, but personally, I don't think their change was good enough. So that's what I want to talk about in this video. First, I will talk about what the exact change is, then I will talk about what happened at the Warhammer Fest GT that brought on these changes, and then I will talk about why I think that they are the wrong changes and what I would have changed instead. With that said, this video is brought to you by themagnetbaron.com. They offer magnets for modeling purposes at a very good price, and they also offer flying stands, magnets for magnetized army trays, and even offer pre-built and magnetized models. If you were looking into magnetizing your models to switch out the weapons or just for the ease of transport, then check out themagnetbaron.com. The link is in the description. So the change that was announced by Games Workshop was that all of their future tournaments would be held at 1750 points instead of the standard 2000. Games Workshop decided on making this change after one of their grand tournaments, which was held at Warhammer World, was won by an Orc player who won the event but never made it past turn 3 in any of his games. From what I've read online, the player in question was said to have been slow playing by the majority of the community in order to win his games. This is all speculation since it's really hard to prove that someone is intentionally slow playing, because naturally everyone slow plays whether they'd like to admit it or not. Both players usually take their time, not realizing how fast time flies during a game of Warhammer 40k. And then next thing you know, the judge is calling time and the player who has less points gets angry and blames slow play. In a vast majority of instances where people accuse slow play, this is normally the case. In this instance though, at Warhammer World, I think it's easy to say that this player was slow playing when you look at the statistics from the end of the tournament. The player who placed first, the Orc player, only killed 3,245 points worth of enemy units. Now compare that to second place and third place and everything even up to 9th place, and you'll see in comparison his stats are extremely low. In fact, his stats look more like one of the players in a much lower placing. We can also see that he never killed an enemy warlord and always achieved Linebreaker, meaning it's very possible that this player just moved his army to where they needed to be in order to score as many points as possible without even having to kill the enemy. This makes even more sense when you realize that the tournament was being played with Eternal War missions from the chapter approved book, which basically summarize up to stand on more objectives at the end of the game to win. And considering the list that this player used, which was multiple maxed out units of boys that have objectives secured, he probably just moved his boys onto objectives as slowly as possible in order to stall out the game and make it end on an earlier turn, so that way his mobs would still have a decent amount of models left, which would mean he would easily control any objective his boys set foot on. Overall, it's a very unsportsmanlike strategy and I would not condone this type of play since it hurts the spirit of competition. So now that you know what went down at the Warhammer World GT and why Games Workshop felt the need to make this change, let's talk about the change they decided to go with and why I personally feel it's the wrong way to go. So Games Workshop said they are lowering the sizes of armies by 250 points, meaning the tournaments would be played at 1750 points. Personally, I don't feel like this changes anything because the problem that occurred at the GT could still occur with 1750 point armies. A player can still move their models super slowly to take up time, they can drag out even more time by contemplating their next move, they can slowly gather dice for dice rolls, and many other ways that they can cheat the clock, so to speak. Lowering the points cost does not fix this. If someone wants to slow play, they are still going to slow play with the current set of rules. I get the idea behind the change because yes, when two non-asshole players are playing a game together with smaller armies, then the game will be shorter than if it was being played with larger armies. But this doesn't stop an asshole from abusing the rules to still get what they want at the end of the day. Changing the points values has no effect over how the player will play the game. So with that said, what I would do differently in order to fix slow play and be able to allow games to finish on the time limit, my change would be to enforce the use of chess clocks. Personally, I think chess clocks are the best option, and here are my reasons why. Chess clocks means there is literally zero slow play. It literally stops both players from being able to slow play, unlike the points changes. Because if you do slow play, your clock is going to run out before your opponent's. And with the way the ITC does chess clocks, if you run out of time, you don't get to play the game anymore, and your opponent, if they still have time, can play the game without you. Meaning the person that doesn't have time, all they can do on their turn, well not even on their turn, all they can do for the rest of the game is roll saves, while the other player gets to move on objectives, shoot stuff, kill stuff, and do everything. So it really incentivizes you to not run out of time, because if you do, you're most likely going to lose the game because of it. I know chess clocks work from my own experience because I had to play with a chess clock at the recent ITC GT I attended. On day one, no one was forced to use chess clocks because a lot of the players that were there were casuals and didn't care about chess clocks and just wanted to roll some dice. So they only enforced chess clocks on day 2 for the top 8 to stop someone from winning the tournament by slow playing. All 3 games I played on day 1 never made it past turn 4. Neither my opponent or myself were slow playing, and we were playing at what I would consider a normal pace for a game of Warhammer 40k. And remember, these games didn't have chess clocks. Then on day 2, when I was in top 8, I had to play with the chess clock, and oh my god was it intense. And it really showed me how fast you need to play in order to stay on time and to finish a 2,000 point game within 2.5 hours. My game 4, which was against the Tyranid Horde army, actually finished naturally on turn 6, and we had 20 minutes left in the round. It was nuts how fast we were moving, and it made the game feel so much more intense and competitive. I loved it. I was pushed to my limit because I had to do Math Hammer on the fly while moving units instead of taking time in between moving and shooting. I had to think about my movement phase during his shooting phase. Overall, it was great and it made the game so much better, and we actually finished the game with time to spare. The urgency of seeing your half of the clock ticking down lights a fire under your ass and makes you move and think quicker than you normally would. And this is because of the consequence of what happens when you run out of time. You're literally not allowed to play anymore if you run out of time, which basically means your opponent is going to win if they have enough time left to move on objectives and push you off. If this was implemented at the Warhammer World GT, the Orc player would have ran out of time after an hour and 15 minutes, and the opponent would have had time left over to move the Orcs off of the objectives and rightfully win the game. Now I know what a lot of you are thinking, and that is, why should an elite army get the same amount of time as a Horde army? It takes more time for the Horde army to move its models and to roll buckets of dice. To which my response is that honestly, that view is a warped view of thinking. Why should a Horde player be given more time than any other player? Sure, he has more models to use, but it was his choice to play his Horde army. It wasn't his opponent's choice, so why should his opponent be punished? Because that's what it is. If we have 2.5 hours for a game, and one player wants to take up 2 hours, and only give the other player 30 minutes, that's not fair. And let's say we did give special treatment based on army choice. What do we do when 2 Horde armies face each other? Do we extend the whole round for everyone in the tournament, making the tournament last a lot longer than it should? No, each player has the same amount of time, and if they can't play within that time restriction, then they shouldn't be playing that army, or they should learn to play faster by practicing. Like I said about the chess clocks earlier, you quickly learn to move faster when you have that fire lit under your ass. You'd be surprised at how many models you can move in under a minute if you have a time limit. There are many things you can do for Horde armies as well that helps cut down on wasted time. For example, you can get movement trays. There are a lot of people selling them online, and I seen a bunch at the tournament I went to. Another example would be to keep a pile of dice ready for each unit you have, and when models die from that unit, then just remove the appropriate amount of dice. This lowers the amount of time wasted of having to count out 1,000,000 dice for your attacks, since you have them all ready to go. There are tons of ways to cut down on wasted time. And to give myself as an example too, I was playing an army that had over 180 poison shots, and that's not including the other guns that I had. I was playing Dark Eldar at the ITC GT, and like I just said, I had a bunch of shots, so I had to roll a ton of dice on my turn. And I noticed that when playing without a chess clock, I played at a more relaxed pace that most people normally do, and my games never finished on time. But then when given a chess clock, I saw that I was able to play with my army, again, against a Horde army, and we finished the game with 20 minutes to spare in the battle round. That should be saying something. When you have a chess clock and you're staring down that timer going down very quick, you're going to move your models faster. It really does, like I've said multiple times, it really does push you and makes you just move faster than you normally would. Overall though, I think chess clocks are the way to go forward in stopping slow play, because lowering the points of an army doesn't accomplish what is intended, and all it really does accomplish is just stopping us from being able to use all the toys, models that we want to. I don't think Games Workshop will ever implement chess clocks, but I'm glad that most ITZ events have included them and aren't lowering their points cost. And personally, I love playing with chess clocks. They allow games to actually finish within the time limit, and they are the best defense against actual slow play. Lowering the points isn't going to do anything to slow play. A slow player will still slow play. Well anyways, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more Warhammer 40k content. And if you'd like to help support the channel even further, you can check me out on Patreon. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy wargaming.